Well, hey, Dave Molenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I am in love with this topic this week. It's one of my favorite. I speak around the country on it, and I found somebody in a different country that speaks on it and loves it probably as much, if not more than me. And I'm going to start with like this kind of this jolting question. Like we always like to talk about a question, start with a question. So, for the listener right now, for you that own a company, for you that lead a team, what do you think the chances are right now of your team being engaged? And I'm like, when I first got that question asked to me, I'm like, well, oh my gosh, everybody on my team is engaged. And then I realized what a huge blind spot that is. And Gallup said right now that only 1 in 3 on your team are engaged in what they're doing. So when you start thinking about that, I'm like, man, I got to get some help on this topic today. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Katrena Friel. How are you today?
I'm fantastic, Dave. Thanks for chatting with me. How fun this is going to be.
Absolutely. You are a corporate trainer and executive coach for the engagement switch. So, what in the world is an engagement switch? Fill us in on that.
Well, if everyone just visualizes the light switch going on and off, every time you're talking to a staff member in the hallway, every time you're having a meeting, every time there's a touch point going on, you're either switching them on or switching them off. And I'm coaching day and night individuals deep inside your organizations, and I'm getting the real truth about how they feel. And you know, from what I can gather from my clients, about 75% of them are shocked and dismayed and disappointed and have become disengaged over time. Now, nobody starts disengaged. So
Right.
something's going on over
Yep.
time. Yeah. And it's there's a lot going on, and you'll be I mean, I know, Dave, you won't be surprised, but the average CEO would be very surprised as to what is turning the staff off.
Well, and we're going to unpack that today. So I'm super excited to get your feedback. Let's get it right out of the way. That accent is not from the United States. We're bringing you in from Sydney, Australia. So it's already tomorrow there. So thank you so much for hanging out with us at such an early hour for you. Appreciate that. Back to what Gallup said. So again, I take this proverbial team of 10 people just because it's easy in my head for math. So for the average listener right now, Katrena, that's listening, that has 10 people on their team, basically Gallup is saying there's only 3 of them that show up engaged. So can you kind of unpack what an engaged employee looks like? What is your experience of how do I spot an engaged employee? What am I looking for to see if my team members are in fact engaged?
So I call those things clues.
Okay.
So you want to have a look at what are the clues that you can see. Um, you can look at body language for one, see how they're sitting up in a meeting. Engaged people sit up, they lean in, they contribute. I like to think of them as the sparkly eyed people. They're the ones that want to have one on one time with you. They're coaching and mentoring just organically and naturally other
Sure.
people in the organization. The list goes on and on. Engaged people are 10 times more productive than the ones that are switched off. So, these people are amazing, and they
Yeah.
are often high performing, self managing people. So the minute you switch them off, you will notice because they're doing heavy lifting inside the organization. They're coming up with innovations. They're creative. They want to improve process. They want to improve systems. They'll have ideas for everything.
Sure.
And the whole time that they're there inside the organization, they start off like that. And then over time, as they get punched in the stomach time and time again, one thing that sticks out in my mind in my career was when I got told, because I was very switched on and wanted to I was very engaged and
Sure.
enthusiastic. I got told many times in my career, we don't pay you to think.
Mm,
And for
wow.
a high performing, self managing person, that is the most depressing thing to hear
Yeah,
because I can't not be enthusiastic. I can't not want to improve things. These people desperately want to help everybody and especially their team members to have a better
sure.
day. We spend so much time at work, you know, more so than with our chosen loved ones. It should be fun. It should be creative. It should be fulfilling. But you'll find that 75% of people find no meaning or fulfillment in their role. Sorry, I've lost you, Dave. You're muted.
Hello,
Uh,
there we go. Try that. Sorry about that. That's me. I was trying not to cough and at the same time. So sorry about that. So your clues, so for the person listening, how cool is that to really kind of, do your own assessment of your team? You can look at their body language. Are they coaching others, like Katrena said? Are they high performers, heavy lifters? I'm guessing though that there might be people listening that don't want to do that. Do you run into people that are like, "Hey, it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're doing good enough. We're fine." I mean, do you run into leaders that have that kind of we're okay and we don't want to rock the boat type of thought process?
oh gosh, leaders can be some of the most disengaged people.
Yeah,
Um, uh, I find that sometimes I call them dead wood, people that don't want to engage, that aren't
sure.
interested in that attitude you just described.
Yep,
Um, they are dead wood. They are just treading water. And you know, some people are waiting for retirement. They're often the worst because they're just not interested in doing anything extra or pushing things forward. They just want status quo. I don't like change. I roll my eyes in meetings
yeah,
at the enthusiastic ones. They're I have this opinion. I call them 90 percenters.
okay,
So 90% of people are just lifelong learners. They'll only learn and grow by reacting to
hmm,
retrenchment, being
okay,
fired, or something happens to them where they have to learn and grow. Whereas the ones I like to work with are the top 10% of the world. These are proactive with their development. They're switched
sure,
on. They're interested in learning and development. They're doing their studies. They've got their resume up to date. They are engaging on LinkedIn. These people are high performing, self managing leaders, self
sure,
leaders even. And so I think we can divide the world up into two things, and that is 90 percenters. And they're the ones that you're describing that just want to keep the status quo, don't rock the boat. If it ain't broke, it isn't, don't fix it.
yep,
And you can get that on a continuum. If it's on a continuum, you can go right down to the bottom 10% of that lot are actively being cancers in your business and actually
yeah,
sabotaging your business. And I call them cancers and tumors in your business because they've got all the time in the world to recruit others.
yeah,
The top 10% haven't got time to recruit into their club of positivity.
sure,
Uh, so it really bothers me that the high performers are out there doing it, busy growing the business, and
yeah,
the other 10% are out there poisoning the pond. And that's
wow,
scary, really
yeah, no.
scary.
Yeah. Well, and Gallup had kind of they use their three buckets. They use engaged, disengaged, and then actively disengaged. And I think you're talking about those actively disengaged, people, Katrena, that end up just like it's not enough for them to be like silent, haters of the thing. They gotta go and try to recruit, like you said, and I wish that we as leaders, I feel like, and I want to get your opinion on this, I think a lot of leaders are investing time and energy trying to get those people off the team, and they're missing that middle group of people that we could turn into engaged people in the right training and the right setting. Do you notice that a lot of the leaders that you run into that are focusing more on the people that are actively disengaged as opposed to the people that are just disengaged and try to get them to move up?
Yeah, it's such a shame. It's like that old adage, the squeaky wheel
Yeah.
gets attention. And so
Yep.
they're, what happens with me is I get pulled into organizations to get those people to resign.
Gotcha.
So, so they get me into it's a coaching relationship. I suppose you could call it performance management on the surface.
Sure.
But once I often will go in initially to train, then I'm identifying everybody when I'm training them. Then I go with them all into individual coaching sessions, and they've pinpointed who they want to resign. Now, what happens is when I shine my light on what we want to be doing around here, they suddenly realize they've got nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
We all have a language now around your behavior, your attitude, and your recruitment of others into your negativity pity party.
Yeah.
And we don't want you around there. So once the light has been shone on them and the spotlight becomes on them, they tend to want to leave because
Yeah.
they're exposed. And so it's
Sure.
very easy to do. So I recommend that to all leaders, is to shine the light very quickly on these people and get them to resign ASAP. The issue is high performers have everywhere to go, every opportunity open to them. These
Sure.
10% stay because they've got nowhere else to go. They don't
Gotcha.
interview well. Their negative attitude seeps out of every pore in their body. And they know they've got to hang on for dear life because
Yeah.
they haven't got options. They're the
Sure.
worst to employ.
Wow.
And so if you can get rid of them out of your organization, great, try and do that. And if you need a professional to do that, it's people like Dave and I that can get that process happening. And all it
Yeah.
requires, I swear, is that you shine a light on their behavior, call them on it every time. After about the third time, they'll stop doing it.
Wow. So I have a tough question for you, which it just popped into my head, because I'm sure there's a listener or two or more probably listening somewhere on the around the world that is part of the team, and the leader is one of those 10% at the disengaged level, and they're working for somebody that's always negative. They're working for somebody that is trying to just eke by. What do you do if you're part of the team and you want to do better, but your leader is kind of prohibiting that from happening?
They leave.
Okay.
They leave. And that's why it's one of, like, the people piece inside your organization is the most expensive piece. You've spent tens of thousands of dollars recruiting these people,
Yep.
onboarding these people,
Yep.
training these people. Now the money's really racking up. You want to try and keep people for 4 years just to get a return on investment.
Yeah.
But these people won't stay for two. They
Sure.
won't stay for one because the life's too short for them. Positive people need to move forward. They need to have this sense that they're learning and growing. And the number one reason why people leave is their direct manager. And that
Yep.
is what I hear in my one-on-one sessions. I'm hearing the most horrific communication stories from leaders
Yeah.
who communicate, can't even address basic bad behavior. And so
Yeah.
they see that about 10 times and then they start to polish up their resume and start looking because they just can't tolerate it. Not high
Yeah.
performance, self-managing
Sure.
people, they can't tolerate it. And I know the minute I would see it and I didn't respect my boss, I would start the process of trying to leave in my 30-year career.
Sure. Wow. Well, and I want to kind of circle back to what you said earlier, Katrina, because you talked about like day one. I'm guessing, and I think we're both in agreement that like day one of employment for people, most people are like they're at that spot where they want to be engaged. And I feel like there's a big responsibility of a leader to either help that individual move up in engagement or push them down into disengagement. I'm just curious, what has your experience been on day one for that person? Is a good leader create a good follower, and a bad leader generally create a bad follower? Is that kind of what you see?
Course, it would absolutely go without saying. I think it starts in the recruitment process where they're being told all this stuff and they believe it. They do their
Yeah,
research, they see the values, they are told all this gorgeous stuff about how amazing it is. But what people are finding and what people don't tolerate anymore is when the talk doesn't match the action. They're sold a lie. And so what
yeah,
happens, they go in and they get bombarded with one negative experience after another. And about 3 times in from that process, they're thinking, huh? This doesn't add up. This is
yeah,
incongruent. That's not what they said. They
yeah,
said their values are this, but I'm receiving this. So have a look at your values and have a look at the user experience, and you'll find there's a big gap. And that's what people are sort of perceiving. And
sure,
that's what we sort of look for in the engagement surveys is we're sort of saying, are we doing what we say we do?
sure.
And
For the
I rarely see that those two things match. And I know
Sure,
from
gotcha.
millennials, I mean, millennials are like, oh my God, this is so wrong. This is a lie. This
Yeah,
doesn't match my expectation at all. And they're
right.
horrified because they didn't they were so naive going into the workforce that they didn't realize that corporations are nothing like they are on
Yeah,
the inside, and they don't know how to
wow,
cope. As Gen Xers, we've grown up with it. We know how terrible it is in our careers,
sure.
and we put up with it. But then the next generation after us went, we're not putting up with that. That doesn't match, and we're over it. And so
Is
they
it
really aren't as productive as Gen Xers were.
is it getting shorter and shorter that, empathy, or that, like, for the average worker, the average team member, is their span of giving grace out getting shorter and shorter? I mean, if they are at a spot and they're not feeling like they're moving anywhere, it just looks like it's a lot easier to move around nowadays than it was back in my day, in my 20s and 30s, back in the 70s and the 80s. Well, I should say the 70s and the 80s and 90s. It felt like, man, like, I've had two jobs in my life for the most part, and I've owned both the companies that I've worked with, and it just seemed like I was just like, if there was a hiccup, or if there was something in the road, you went around it. You didn't just like, I'm out, that's it, right? And I don't know what the right answer is. I'm just curious. It feels like they raise their hands and I'm out. They tap out a lot quicker than they used to. And I'm just curious what your experience has been.
Well, that's because their resilience is lower. So
Okay.
these kids have grown up with parents saying, you can do whatever you want, the world's your oyster,
Yeah.
you can dream it, you can build it. They've grown up on all that bullshit. And so when they get into the workforce, they have very unrealistic expectations. And
Right.
when the expectations doesn't get fulfilled, they get really bratty about it and
Yeah.
demand that they get promoted in 5 seconds. They don't earn their stripes. They think they're masters coming out of university when really they don't know what they don't know. And
Yeah.
so I do a lot of training and coaching around that next generation, around that resilience piece, around that empathy piece, around that understanding that organizations don't move fast, that it takes a long time to turn a ship around and to develop an organization's culture. And
Sure.
so them having a dummy spit and having unrealistic expectations is really the fault of what they were sold in the interview. And
Sure.
so what we need to be doing is getting them more aware of the reality. And really that should be the parents. The parents
Yeah.
should be sort of telling them what it's like, but they don't. They have very unrealistic expectations. And so it's very hard to win that race and maintain
Wow.
their expectations because they can't
Yeah.
tolerate any pain, none.
I don't know where this coming out of college and expecting six figures thing came from, at least in the US. I don't know how what
No,
that
yeah.
translates to over in Australia, but it's like, oh my gosh, people just they have 4-year degree and maybe they have 6 to 9 months of experience at something. And right away they're a senior something after 6 to 9 months, and and they act like they've been doing this for 25 years. So do you see that pretty much? Because again, I'm only focused on the United States. So in your travels, are you seeing that become more and more of a norm?
Yeah, it's absolutely the norm here as well. What's happening is the universities are losing their place of importance in the world. And so
Okay.
what they do is they feed their students bullshit, and they feed them that, you do a master's of marketing, then you're a master of marketing. And yet
Yeah.
they've got no real life experience. So they come out of a master's in marketing wanting to be a director of marketing. And it's like, oh my God,
Right.
you
Yeah.
don't know what you don't know. So what I
Yeah.
say to these young people is you've got to earn your first stripe. So your first
Sure.
stripe you get at between 20 and 25. And then from 25 to 30, you earn your second stripe. And 30 to 35, you earn your third stripe. By the time you hit 40, you are entering the beginning of your peak. This is
Oh
the
boy.
beginning of your mastery. Then you
Sure.
spend the rest of your career in mastery, and you know, that could be 50, 60, 65,
Yeah.
70, and then you're in that top end of the bell curve.
Sure.
And how long you want that to go on for is
Yeah.
up to you. For me, I think I can still do what I do even at
Yeah.
80. And if you love what you do, you want to do it for longer. Whereas if
For
you hate
sure.
what you want to retire as soon as
Yeah,
possible.
exactly. Yeah, I
Whereas
love hearing people in their 30s looking to retire already. It's like, wow, seriously. You
I know
got
they
we got
haven't earned their stripes. So
yeah, got 2 stripes so far. You got 6 to go, so good luck. Hey, we're gonna
yeah.
take a quick break. When we come back, Katrina, I wanna unpack your Flick model, FLICK, because I think people are getting an understanding of where this is. We wanna provide a solution here, so we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm honored to be hanging out with Katrena Friel, who is the corporate trainer and executive coach at the Engagement Switch, and she's created a model it's called Flick, FLICK. So why don't you go ahead if you can and kind of walk us through what that is so that we can understand how we can combat and how we can work with this engagement issue that we have in our company.
Yeah, so in the show notes, I've given everybody an infographic so that they've got a copy of this that they can print out and sort of think about it and look at it moving forward. So if you think about the flick the switch on engagement, so you're flicking the switch on or off. That's why it's called flick.
Okay?
So every time you engage somebody in conversation or at a meeting, you're either switching them on, then they stay engaged or they become engaged, or you're switching them off. So let's talk about F. F is the first thing to think about is your place of work is going to work on a daily basis fun and fair? Most organizations are not fun and most are not fair. There's nothing fair about it. So this is the
Sure.
first thing to sort of assess. You can even ask your staff, what can we do to make it more fun and more fair here?
Okay.
The new generation demand it's fair, that it's a fair playing ground, that I know the rules of the game and I know
Sure.
how to win. It's got to be fair.
Yep.
Number L, so L is for leadership. And so I do a 2-day leadership management masterclass in that L. So leadership is all about having a look at whether your organization is transparent, whether there's reliability around your leadership style and the way things are run. It's got to be consistent. This is the worst one. Most leaders are moody. You don't know what you're getting. You're scared to go in, not consistent,
Sure.
and taking responsibility. As a leader, everyone needs to take responsibility for their part in it all. So they're the sort of 4 things I get leaders to check in with at the surface level. I is for influence. This is where I want everyone to have influence. being able to manage, influence people up, down, and sideways in an organization. This is how you get things done. And most people are not very influential. They have no skills in influencing. And so nothing really happens. C is for clues. I already talked about clues, looking for clues as to whether people
Yep.
are engaged or disengaged. And the other thing is C is for cherish. This is where you want to cherish the good people. These people are giving their lives, their days, their time away to you and your cause. You better cherish the fact that you found them, that they chose you, and that they're still in the chair. So cherish them in any way you possibly can. And then K, the final two, is knowledge. Have knowledge of your staff, because everyone is different, everyone is unique, and everyone gets engaged and disengaged in different ways. So you want to know what turns people on. You want to know what turns people off. And you've got to have a knowing about that. So K is for knowing how to engage your team and really understanding your team and what makes them tick. So that's the
Sure.
flick model.
Wow, that's awesome. So fun and fair is
Yeah.
F, leadership is L, influence is I, clues and cherish is C, and knowledge of your staff is K. So I have a couple questions for you because I'm guessing that there were a ton of brake lights that went on as soon as you said fun, because in some of the old school mindset and even probably some of the current leadership models now, it's like you got a job to do, get it done. This we're not, it's called work, it's not called fun, right? So how do you balance that? How do you address somebody that kind of has that mentality of, hey, we're here to get a job done, we're not here to have fun, so to speak?
I'm all for that. I'm all for getting the job done. But if you have a look at what I'm doing now, at the moment, I'm at work. At the moment, I am working and I am having fun. And the reason I'm having fun is because I'm stimulated, I'm with a like minded person, I'm being respected for my opinion, and it's ticking a whole bunch of boxes for me right now. So
Sure.
I am having fun. Where people go wrong is that they assume taking the team down to the pub at 5 for a beer is
Yeah.
now a switch on the fun. Now, half the people think that's fun. The other half of people are going down resentfully to the pub. They
Yeah.
just want to go home. They love their family. They miss their family. You're now making me go down. I'm now disengaged.
Fair.
When
Yep.
you thought that 100% of people were going to go down and have a beer and have fun. No. So
Wow.
doing those sorts of things on the surface look like fun, but they're actually very, very bad for half the people, particularly the ones that can't drink because they're driving or they're
Right.
pregnant or their religious beliefs, they don't drink. So gone are the days where you can just take someone down to the pub and think that that's team bonding. It's not.
Right. Wow. And I tell you what, I think that you bring up a really good point right there about expanding your idea as a leader of what fun means. And, I remember early in my career, we had a dog track that was close to our office, and we used to go for half days and bring the group there and bet on the dogs, and everyone, we thought it was fun, but we realized that not everybody was like us, was like having fun with it. So we learned through trial and error that, hey, maybe we have to try some other ideas on expanding what that version of fun means. So I think that's a great lesson right here for anybody listening, that your fun, to Katrena's point, your fun might not be somebody else's fun. And, so we do a ton of work with DISC, the personality profile assessment. And in there, we love doing this with teams, because in there, it'll tell you what these people enjoy, what motivates them, what is their ideal environment. So it really gives you a glimpse into it, which is kind of like the K, the knowledge of your staff. The more that you understand them, the better likelihood you're going to have them engaged. I'm assuming that that's the knowledge of the staff. Sorry, we're jumping around, but those two kind of connect. Is
Got that.
knowledge of the staff like that, really understanding what motivates them, what drives them, and what makes them tick?
Yeah, I still use DISC today. I've used DISC for 30 years. I still do it in every leadership management masterclass. DISC is, and any of those sort of things,
Yeah.
gives incredible insights. And if you just look at DISC on the introvert extrovert side, now I train people to be multiverts. I want them to be able to access their extrovert as well as their introvert. But in
Okay.
DISC, we see half the people are going to be introverted, which means they hate any public display of happy birthday,
Yep.
singing, bringing the cake out. They hate all that. If
Yep.
you want to engage an introvert, go up privately, quietly, and just say, thank you so much. Costs
Absolutely.
nothing.
Yep.
Quietly, privately. Whereas extroverts love things that are more public. They want a bit more competitive. They want to win things. They want to, get a certificate and get a trophy and have people sing happy birthday to them. Can you see just in the way you approach those two halves,
Right.
completely different? And that's
Yep.
what DISC allows us to do, is look at the spectrums of things. And I love using it like that, in the
Yeah.
spectrum of things. But what I'm
That's
training in
yep.
the background for people is to have a broad spectrum of behavior. I call it full breadth of behavior. They've got to be
Right.
able to do the D, the I, the S, and the C behaviors when appropriate.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great. And I think of it as like if you have a rose and you have a cactus on your team, so to speak, if you take that rose and plant it in sand and water it once a month, it's not going to live. Just
Yeah.
like if you take that cactus and put it in soil, rich black soil, and water it every day, it's not going to live. So each one of our team has an ideal environment, and it's on us, I feel, as leaders, Katrena, to really make sure that this person is in that ideal environment. Otherwise, it's not going to be fun. And it's, nothing in this flick model really happens. We're not cherishing our team. We're not, we don't have any knowledge of them, and they don't really want to influence and get things done. So I'm on board 100%, and I hope that the people listening at least it's not a blind spot for you, because a lot of times leaders say, "Oh, I know all about my staff," and you kind of ask a couple surface questions, and they're just like bewildered, So just to jump to that K real quick, how do you not, what's a like a HR legal way to get to know somebody? Because I mean, again, there's all these rules and everything, and I think it transcends knowing when John's birthday is in the office, correct?
Oh God, yeah. See, that to me is irrelevant. I prefer somebody not to acknowledge my birthday, not to sing happy birthday, and not to get a cake, because a lot of people just don't want to eat cake these days. It's,
Right?
pretty
Yep.
calm, whatever. So, it's, to me, it's so much more than that surface stuff that we used to do. Hi mate, how are you going?
Yeah.
It's really about, if it's the people piece. As a leader, you genuinely like people and you genuinely want to get to know your team. And if you are genuine, you are picking up information all day at meetings, formally, informally. You're just picking up this information. And so, to me, to get to know someone and to have a fun environment, it's all about energy. And so I want all the leaders just to go back to the organization today and think about, what's the vibe here? Is the vibe of genuine concern for one another? And if so, we probably know each other quite well, just
Yeah.
organically.
Yeah.
And if the vibe is quite good and I can walk in a room and just feel good, then that's fun. That's
Yeah.
healthy. That's nice. How I walk into a meeting, how I'm treated in a meeting. One of the things that goes wrong is introverts need to be invited to speak in a meeting. Otherwise, they won't just speak up. And then
Right.
what happens is extroverts are talking all the time, sucking the air out of the room. And
Yeah.
introverts are the ones that are reflective. They've thought about it. They know their opinion, but they have to be invited to speak.
Yep.
So again, think about the vibe of the place. And is the vibe healthy, opened, nourishing vibe, or is it scary, dark, heavy, inconsistent. I
Sure.
don't know if I'm going to get yelled at today or criticized today. So that's foreboding. It's very, very scary vibe. And most people live in that vibe all day, every day. It's awful.
Wow. For someone listening here, Katrena, that might be a job seeker. Maybe they're in a spot where they know they're not going to be for very long. They're somewhere in their journey of moving out of where they are, wherever that looks like. I mean, I feel like there's some really great wisdom here in finding out that culture of a company, finding out if they have this flick model or something like it prior to coming on board. Because I don't know about you, but I generally don't see a good apple coming into a bad apple organization and magically transforming them all to good apples, right? I'm just curious, is this help? I mean, what would a job seeker be looking for? How could they gather some information about the company that they're looking at from this perspective?
I really don't think you'll ever know the truth until you're in it.
Ah,
Um,
great
they
point.
will say all sorts of things in the interview. And
Yeah,
what the HR people think, they have like they're selling you the job, they're selling you the culture, they're selling you the company. Um, and, they buy into that. The
yeah,
HR people don't necessarily know what they're putting you in. And HR, in my eyes, have never been the ones to sort out the culture. They are the ones to instill it. And
gotcha.
so they will be flogging the lie and get staff filled, get the roles filled as quick as possible with the most decent amount of people. And it's only once you're in there. Now, what I like to do is you get in there and there's this grace period where you kind of like you've got your rose colored glasses on and you
Yep.
don't
You're
see,
dating, right?
and everyone's quite kind and nice, and then
Yep.
it starts to go down from there. And so I think even though it's bad for organizations, I think individuals need to sort of think, all right, I've got my deal breakers, I know what my red flags are, and if it's a cultural thing, which it likely is to be, you're not going to change that. If it's your boss is the problem, which in 99% of cases it will be, then you have to accept that because you're not going to be able to coach them, mentor them, improve them. I
Yep.
try my coaching of staff, I try to give them tools and things to do to help affect the day to day. But again, you don't have a lot of control there with the
Sure.
direct manager. And then your team members, you don't have a lot of control and influence there either.
Right.
Um, so I think you've got to get in and get out. So I'd say you'd give yourself 2 years. You learn everything you possibly can from that experience, good and bad, because you learn a lot from the bad. You know what you don't want to be when you're the manager. And so
Yeah.
you just go as the observer, you be amazing, you do everything you can as a high performing self-managing person, and then you get out. But if it turns
Yeah.
out that it's good and they are open to change, then get amongst it, participate. Don't
Yeah.
just sit back and say it's shit. Get in
Yeah.
there, get involved, be the change you want to see in the world, as they say.
Wow, that's awesome. And so we talked about the fun and we were moving around the leadership side. So you were talking about consistency and responsibility. So how does a leader, I mean, obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, I'm guessing consistency is the hardest thing for a lot of leaders is to be the same way, treat this everybody the same, kind of, have this even keel, try to minimize emotion and things like that. What specific things do you see in that leadership consistency role when you created this model? What were your thoughts on that consistency side?
It's consistency is leadership 101. Really check in with your consistency at the very beginning of the whole thing, because what you'll find is staff don't know what they're walking into that day. They live in a very um, are you going to be in a good mood? Are you going to be in a bad mood? Are you going to believe this today or that today. You're going to change the goalpost today. You don't know what you're talking about. You said something
Yeah.
last week, now you're saying something this week. This is what staff have to deal with, and it becomes really difficult to work in an organization that you just don't know what you're going to get that day. So consistency is key, and it's not about not being emotional and not having emotions and leaving your emotions at the door. Gone are those days. We
Yeah.
come in work now as a whole person.
Sure.
We are a whole person, and that includes our emotions. So it's not about that. What it's about is being emotionally intelligent
Yeah.
and being able to self-regulate. Now, consistency in a leader, and I'm calling everyone a leader, everyone self-leads,
Right.
everyone needs to be self-aware, be able to self-regulate, be able to self-motivate, have empathy and good social skills. That's EQ in a box. And
Yep.
so consistency sits in the self-regulation. Now, if you're furious and angry and disappointed and something terrible's happened and you can't believe it,
Yeah.
then you go away and you process that emotion. And then you come back to your team and you've processed the emotion. The emotion's been processed and you understand it and you understand your triggers, etc. Then you come back to your team and you go, I was furious yesterday. I was so bitterly disappointed in all of us. I cannot believe that that's where we're at. Now,
Sure.
can you see? I'm talking about the emotion. I'm not
Yep.
in the emotion, because no one is paid enough to put up with negative emotions day in and day out. When no one's paid, even if you were paid $1 million, it's not
Yeah.
enough to put up with anger, sadness, fear, and guilt. It's
Yeah.
just, you cannot
Sure.
have all those emotions being punched in your face every day of the week. And that's what's happening. People do not know what they're walking into. So go and process your own emotions, then come and address it with the staff, but never address it in the emotion. That is not good leadership.
Sure. Yeah. And I totally agree. And we do a ton of work with EQ along with DISC because they are so interchanged with each other. And if you're not, I mean, when I was talking about not emotional, I was talking about making the decisions emotionally, because I've seen a lot of leaders make a lot of bad decisions, including myself early in my career, making a lot of bad decisions because of emotion. Somebody didn't like something. I mean, I was on a Zoom call where a guy got fired on a Zoom call, and it was just like, whoa, man. And all the other people felt really awkward. And fortunately, they came back together after and mended the path. But, you hold the leadership responsible for that kind of thing, to get so emotional on a Zoom call that you let your, emotion take over. And so I think that's the cool part about that consistency thing, is it's not void of emotion, but it's like you said, it's regulating that emotion and making sure that you're not thinking from that perspective. So that's awesome. As we land the plane today, you mentioned influence, so how to get things done. So how does that really work into the to this click model right here, or the flick model, excuse me? How does that work into that model?
So influence is one of those skills that I call the new communication skills, the new sales skills, in influencing skills is what we call it. We want to exercise influence up, down, and sideways throughout our career. And most people are not investing in that. And so everybody from the top to the bottom needs to be investing in their influencing skills. You want to be a great communicator, because if you are a great communicator, you have every chance to influence everybody around you in a positive way, hopefully.
Sure.
So influencing skills is absolutely essential for each and every one of us to be going and doing ongoing learning and development around our influencing skills. It's just a key thing these days. But in the old days, it was called communication skills. We would have gone on sales training, whereas now we call it influencing skills.
Gotcha. Wow, that's so cool. And yeah, there are plenty of people that think they've arrived at their end of their learning. And so, we gotta just do our best to help people realize the importance of always learning. But again, the people that don't want to learn, they're not on this, right? They're not listening to podcasts because they learned it all. They don't need this. So we're preaching to the choir on that one.
Yeah,
Um,
the ones
is
that are listening are the top 10% of the world. They are activated lifelong learners, and that's what you and I are. That's what we want to switch others onto. And
Yep.
as you know, activated lifelong learners love to learn. They're proactive about their development, and they are listening to podcasts like this.
Absolutely. I love listening to podcasts. It's taken on such a cool nuance to just type onto some device a word that you want to learn more about, and hundreds of podcasts show up. It's pretty cool how that is. So what would your tip of the day be, Katrena, for somebody listening today? Maybe it's something we covered, maybe it's something on your heart that we haven't shared yet, but what would your tip of the day be for somebody listening?
Oh, the impact that you're having every single day is immense. And what I hear out the other end is there's people are very unhappy, very sad, very unfulfilled, and just stumbling around in the dark, going to work every day, when really every day should be a learning experience. The meaning of life is to learn and grow. Simple as that. And when people are not learning and growing, you become disengaged in life, let alone disengaged in your work and your career and your business and whatever we're doing. And so life's too short. People are dying all over the place at 40 and 50 now,
Yeah.
which is considered to be halfway through your life, and yet they're dropping dead. And they're doing that through stress, and we're causing the stress. In our organizations, we're adding to the stress
Yeah.
where they just don't know what they're walking into every day because it's just so up and down. And so all we can do is focus in on what we can control. And the only thing we can control is ourself. The only thing we can influence is others.
Sure.
And so if we just bring it back to working on ourselves, we have a lot of control there to improve ourselves every single day, become better leaders, better communicators, better influencers. And, that impacts everyone around us. It is truly a ripple effect. And you'll be
Wow.
amazed at how that ripple effect is going through your organization right now because of you.
That is great. I wrote down those 4 words. Your impact is immense. So hopefully you take those words today, even if you are, at some job where you don't feel anyone's watching, you don't think that you're making a difference. Somebody's watching, somebody's learning from you. So continue to do that. Thank you for those kind words and those wisdom-filled words. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you personally, Katrena, they really are inspired by what they heard today, they want to learn more about the Flick model, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
So they can jump on the website, theengagementswitch.com.au, because I'm in Australia. So that's .com.au. Don't forget, everyone in America. Not everyone's a .com. So yeah, jump on there and book in you can have a free discovery session where I spend an hour with you, just unpacking where you're at, where you want to go. And out of that, you'll get a lot of clarity around what your gaps are or what to do about your situation. And it's quite a spiritual experience. It truly is. It's your hour that you can devote, a gift that I can give you, where we can unpack a lot of stuff and really get clarity on things, get perspective on things, and decide what are you going to do moving forward. So I look forward to spending alone time with you and just going deeper on some of these things we've talked about today.
That's awesome. It's theengagementswitch.com.au.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. Theengagementswitch.com.au. And I can say In the same as we close this today, the same vein is that I do the same thing where you give an hour to somebody. There's a lot of times that we just fix the problem in an hour, it costs them nothing, and they're like on about their way. So if you're listening, don't feel like this is just a way for her to, ingrain herself deeply in your company. You get to decide if you want to have that happen, or maybe it's something that can get fixed in an hour, so that's what I think is so powerful. If you decide not to do this, that's totally fine, but you can't get mad at Katrena and you can't get mad at me because we have offered this to you today. So if your engagement isn't where you want it to be on your team, again, go back to where we started. 1 in 3 people right now on your team are working. The other 2 out of 3, they're doing something other than working. And that is on us as leaders. So I hope that you take and make yourself available to the engagementswitch.com.au, get a realistic discussion and approach on what you have or don't have, and then you get to decide how you want to move forward. So thank you, Katrena, so much for hanging out with us today. I love this discussion. We could talk about it all day, but it's already the next day for you in Australia. So you got stuff to do, and I'm done for my day. So just let me know what numbers I should use in the lottery tonight so that I can go ahead and win. That would be awesome. So thank you so much for all you're doing, and I can't wait to keep learning from you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real fun time. Thank you.